Which scene from Batman, starring Adam West, do you simply cannot forget? It's the scene where he dodges nuns, marching bands, and baby ducks while running around the docks attempting to dispose of a huge bomb. In my opinion, crazy, hilarious, and utterly iconic. The Batman series from the 1960s was colorful, campy, and packed with zing and PW. Completely different from the gloomy Batmans of today. Adam West became well known as a result of it being a pop culture phenomena and reinventing television superheroes. However, the reality is that the world of Batman wasn't always as happy and bright as it appeared on film, with issues ranging from unjust compensation to risky stunts gone wrong. Therefore, we're reliving those crazy, frequently disregarded moments from the Adam West period in this film. These are the problematic aspects of Batman that nobody discusses. There was inequality in Gotham City from the beginning, particularly with regard to salaries. Burt Ward, Adam West's loyal sidekick, was receiving a far lesser portion of the pie, while the Dark Knight was earning enormous sums of money. The statistics paint a really startling picture. Both actors had to put in a great deal of effort because each season featured 34 episodes, and the show aired twice a week. They spent all of their time on set, learning lines, performing stunts, and navigating those uncomfortable, hot costumes in the bright studio lights. But just one of them was grinning when payday arrived. Burt Ward's weekly salary was only $350, a negligible portion of Adam West's earnings. Take a moment to consider that. Robin worked almost as many hours, had just as many lines to learn, and appeared in nearly every scene. Despite being half of the dynamic team, he was not even close to receiving half the pay. Even though this type of compensation disparity was quite typical in Hollywood at the time, it still hurt. Given that viewers adored Robin as much as they did Batman, Burt thought that everything was unfair. On the street, children would swarm toward him and exclaim, "Holy cow, it's Robin!" Despite playing a significant role in the show's success, his finances didn't indicate it. The worst thing? Tension resulting from this compensation disparity persisted for years. Being the sidekick on TV is one thing, but it was far more difficult to accept being regarded as such in real life. Speaking of difficult to accept things, you won't believe what nearly happened to the show itself until you hear about it. The narrative of Batman's dismissal becomes much more complex just when you think it's simple. The majority of viewers are aware that ABC canceled the series after 3 seasons, but most are unaware of how close Batman was to surviving. ABC wasn't entirely callous when they made the decision to shut down. In fact, they hoped that the show would be picked up and continued by another network. This wasn't out of the ordinary. On various networks, shows occasionally find new homes. ABC took a wise move. In case someone wished to carry on Batman and Robin's exploits, they preserved all of the intricate sets. Everything remained in its original location, including Wayne Manor, Commissioner Gordon's office, the Batcave set, and all of the villain lairs. If a different firm sought to purchase the show, the network executives reasoned the sale would be considerably more alluring if all the pricey sets were ready to go. Was similar to keeping the Batmobile fueled up and prepared for another journey. The sets waited for their second chance for months, collecting dust. ABC clung to the hope that someone would see the series' worth. After all, the show had been successful, and Gotham City still had stories to tell. Then, when it appeared that nobody was paying attention, NBC took the initiative. After recognizing Batman's potential, The rival network began serious negotiations to purchase the rights and carry on the series. New episodes, new antagonists, and more of that beloved vintage camp humor would have been available to fans. Batman and Robin reportedly had time for some side jobs in between, thwarting the Joker's plots and foiling the Penguins. The well-known figures made appearances in a number of advertisements and PSAs. It revealed a completely new aspect of Gotham City. Commissioner Gordon was shown observing that Chief Miles O'Hara had filthy hands in one of the most bizarre ads. Gordon summoned Batman and Robin to advise lava soap rather than having him wash them like a regular person. Bruce Wayne's faithful butler, Alfred Pennyworth, also entered the business world. He appeared in a Fact toothpaste commercial, most likely offering advice to viewers on maintaining a level of brightness comparable to Batman's utility belt. It was nearly as weird to see Alfred selling toothpaste as it was to watch him serve tea in Wayne Manor. However, the advertisements were only the first step. Additionally, Batman made appearances in 3 distinct PSAs that presented the character in a completely different way. The Dark Knight urged children to purchase U.S. savings stamps in order to support the Vietnam War in one public service announcement. Fans used to Batman fighting fictional criminals in a light-hearted TV program found it shocking to see him advocating a real-world military combat. Batman urged kids to use caution when riding bikes and crossing roadways in another public service announcement that emphasized road safety. This made more sense. Since Batman was always about keeping people safe, it seemed only fitting that the character would advocate for safety. Unexpected and severe consequences resulted from the popularity of the Batman television series. Children were suffering severe injuries while attempting to imitate their favorite superhero all across the world. But particularly in the UK, the issue was so serious that it made headlines throughout the world and compelled the show's makers to act. Wearing homemade capes, children were scaling tall buildings, trees, and roofs before jumping off, believing they could move like Batman through the air. As was to be expected, the outcomes were awful. Numerous kids sustained scratches, bruises, broken bones, and more serious wounds. Some incidents were so severe that children spent weeks in the hospital. It was a tragic circumstance. Youngsters admired Batman so much that they aspired to be like him. However, they were unaware that what they were watching on television was really a simulation. The special effects in the show, these camera trickery, gave the impression that Batman could actually fly, making it impossible for young viewers to distinguish between fact and imagination. The producers of the show realized they needed to take action when news of these mishaps reached the U.S. They couldn't ignore the fact that kids were actually being harmed by their entertaining TV program. Therefore, a special PSA that Batman and Robin taped was aired before to each program. In the United Kingdom, Robin said the famous words, "Holy broken bones, Batman," in this public service announcement, while clarifying that Batman was not able to fly. Viewers should never attempt to replicate the stunts they seen on the show. The heroes made clear. Batman made it clear that jumping from heights would only cause severe injuries, and that he was only an ordinary person dressed up. Only in the UK was the PSA shown, where the issue was most serious, yet it conveyed a crucial message. Even superheroes had to face the realities of the real world, and keeping the dream alive was subordinated to safeguarding youngsters. Speaking of things that appeared to be different than they actually were, you won't believe how the most well-known sequence from the show was actually recorded until you hear it. There was the same thrilling scene in every Batman episode. With great speed, the Batmobile roared out of the Batcave. All set for another Gotham City adventure. Although it was one of the most recognizable pictures from the show, it wasn't exactly what it seemed, as is often the case with television. The Batcave entrance was filmed at the Hollywood Hills Bronson Cavern, a well-known setting for TV series and films. Batman's covert headquarters was set against the ideal backdrop of the natural cave opening. There was only one issue. The Batmobile could not easily pass. The Batmobile couldn't really accelerate out the way viewers saw it on TV, because the car's frame was bigger than the cave entrance. A car of average size might have made it through, but the Batmobile was a specially designed car that was based on the Lincoln Futura concept car and was significantly larger than a typical car. What steps did the show's makers take to address this issue? They used inventive camera techniques that were quite astute for the 1960s. They chose to alter the way they filmed the sequence rather than enlarging the cave or reducing the size of the car. The cameras recorded fewer frames per second than usual because they were under-cranked. The camera caught the Batmobile moving out of the cave in slow motion, most likely at the pace of a person strolling. The slow-moving car then appeared to be speeding out of the cave when the video was edited and played back at normal speed. This method gave viewers the anticipated sense of speed and excitement. Batman appeared to be racing out to battle crime on TV, but in actuality, the car was hardly moving at all. Speaking of innovative ideas, the program also managed to include some of the greatest names in Hollywood in an intriguing way. Many well-known actors in Hollywood in the 1960s aspired to join the Batman craze. The popularity of the show was enormous, because it was thought to be enjoyable and beneficial to an actor's career to be linked with it. However, not all celebrities could portray the Joker or the Penguin, and there were only so many villain roles available. One of Batman's most cherished running gags was the ingenious solution that the show's creators came up with. Using their dependable bat rope, Batman and Robin would frequently mount the side of a towering structure in Gotham City. Various celebs would peek out of windows to engage in conversation with the dynamic pair. These cameos were consistently brief yet noteworthy. Celebrities typically portrayed regular people who were taken aback when Batman and Robin climbed past their windows. They might simply strike up a polite discussion, ask for autographs, or give advice. It was the ideal method to incorporate well-known actors without needing to include them in the plot. Among the most memorable cameos featured Santa Claus in a Christmas episode, as well as well-known singer and entertainer Sammy Davis Jr., and the great actor Edward G. Robinson. The celebs appeared to sincerely enjoy their brief encounters with Batman, and each appearance was a joyful surprise for the audience. Being asked to appear at a Batman window became a sign that you had truly made it in Hollywood, because these cameos were so Batman and Robin were pleased to poke their heads out of a window for a few seconds, even if they were too famous for regular TV guest spots. Even though the program was quite successful at drawing in well-known actors, there were some intriguing backstories around the selection of the primary antagonists, particularly with regard to one of Batman's most well-known adversaries. One of Batman's most well-liked antagonists on the television series was the Penguin. But the selection procedure for this legendary part was more intricate than enthusiasts may have thought. Before Burgess Meredith was cast, a number of well-known actors were considered, and some of their backstories are really unexpected. At first, Mickey Rooney, the well-known actor who starred in comedies and musicals, was slated to play the part. Rooney, a well-known figure in Hollywood, would have given the role his own unique flair. It's intriguing to consider how the Penguin may have changed in light of Rooney's vivacious, frenzied performance approach at times. One of the most renowned dramatic performers of his period, Spencer Tracy, was another performer who was given careful consideration. Tracy was well known for his somber, reflective roles in movies like Inherit the Wind and Guess Who's Coming to Dinner. He had won 2 Academy Awards. However, Spencer Tracy had a very precise requirement before he could play the Penguin. He wouldn't accept the part unless the script permitted him to murder Batman. Tracy reportedly wanted to give the villain some genuine emotional weight and believed that a more engaging plot would result from the Penguin truly succeeding in his nefarious schemes. Tracy had to be told by the producers that superhero stories didn't operate like this. Batman was the hero, and heroes never die, especially not in a family-friendly television program. Batman's entire message was that excellent. Always defeated evil, and a death for Batman would fundamentally alter the series plot. Tracy declined the part because he didn't want to play a villain who would always lose to the hero. It's interesting to consider what may have transpired if one of the best dramatic performers in Hollywood had applied his somber acting techniques to the campy Batman universe. Burgess Meredith was ultimately cast in the role, and she proved to be ideal for it. Speaking of Burgess Meredith's flawless performance, even he was first unaware of the deeply personal element in his portrayal. The Penguin's characteristic cackle was one of the most unforgettable features of Burgess Meredith's performance, which turned into a legend. For Batman fans, the Penguin's distinctive sound, a raspy, evil laugh, became instantly identifiable. However, there is a humorous tale to the creation of that well-known cackle that even Meredith was surprised at. In reality, years of excessive cigarette smoking were the cause of the actor's raspy voice. Meredith had spent a large portion of his adult life smoking, like many others in his generation. Many performers smoked both on and off film without fully knowing the health consequences, because cigarettes were widespread and socially acceptable at the time. Here's the irony, though. In fact, Meredith had given up smoking 20 years prior to Batman's filming. Long before he had heard of the Penguin, in the 1940s, he had quit smoking cigarettes. He had been smoke-free for 20 years by the time he tried out for Batman in the 1960s. His voice cord damage from those earlier years of smoking persisted, though. Long-term tobacco usage causes a lasting raspiness in his voice, which Meredith likely perceived as a regrettable reminder of a long-standing bad habit proved to be just what the Penguin required. Meredith's Penguin cackle became so famous that it affected all subsequent actors portraying the character. However, the show was about to introduce a new hero who would completely alter the course of events. While the Penguin was turning into a classic villain, Batman's ratings were beginning to decline by the time the 3rd season aired. The campy superhero series was losing its novelty, and ABC began to worry about what would happen to their vibrant crime-fighting program. To entice viewers to return to Gotham City, the network needed something fresh. Their answer was to present Batgirl, a brand new character. Young females who might not have been as interested in a show that primarily featured male characters were to be catered to. The network wanted to increase viewership and give the series more credibility by including a female superhero. A new boost. Batgirl had a personal link to the current actors and wasn't merely a new character. She was identified in the episode as Barbara, the daughter of Commissioner Gordon. This made her arrival seem natural rather than forced, and provided her with an immediate connection to the ongoing plots. When Yvonne Craig was chosen to play Batgirl, she added charm and agility to the part. In reality, Craig had danced in ballet. She possessed the physical abilities required for the action sequences prior to becoming an actress. She also had grace and elegance from her ballet training, which was ideal for a female superhero. The persona was intended to be self-sufficient and competent. Batgirl was able to investigate crimes, fight back against bad guys, and save Batman and Robin from danger. She was a full partner, not simply a romantic interest or a sidekick, in the battle against criminality. The network was so excited about Batgirl that they even planned a spin-off series based on her persona. Batgirl might carry on battling crime in her own program if Batman ended. In the late 1960s, a female-led superhero series would have been revolutionary. Regretfully, the intended Batgirl spin-off never materialized when Batman was canceled in 1968. The character didn't yield the expected return on the network's investment. When Alicia Silverstone portrayed Batgirl in the 1997 movie Batman and Robin, fans would have to wait almost 30 years to see the character again. Imagining what would have happened if the Batgirl series had been produced is an intriguing exercise. Would it have worked? The Batman pilot episode was nearly a total failure, which is difficult to believe now. The first episode's performance among preview audiences was so poor that the network began to seriously question the show's future. Executives questioned whether they had made a grave error in light of the poor scores. Adam West disclosed how inadequate the pilot's testing was in his 1994 book, Back to the Batcave. The lowest possible rating in the testing method, 40, was achieved by the episode. In order to contextualize that, the majority of accomplished pilots received scores in the 60s or above. With a score of 40, test audiences were clearly dissatisfied with what they saw. For ABC, this was a serious issue. TV networks invest a lot of money in creating new programs, and they use test screenings to determine which ones will be popular. Poor pilot testing typically indicates that the show won't attract a viewership and will be abruptly canceled. At this point, the network could have abandoned Batman. Many leaders would have chosen to give up and try something else if they had received such dismal exam results. However, ABC was not yet prepared to give up on the Caped Crusader. Adding a laugh track was their initial attempt to address the issue. The idea was that test audiences may better get the humor of the show if they heard other people laugh and didn't know when to laugh. Regretfully, the pilot's score did not increase at all when they retested it with the laugh track. They then experimented with adding narration to help the viewer follow the plot and understand what was happening. This didn't help either. The network was running out of ideas, and the test scores continued to be stubbornly low. The test results didn't much improve despite all of these adjustments. However, the network had spent a lot of time by now. Speaking of Burgess Meredith's flawless performance, even he was first unaware of the deeply personal element in his portrayal. The Penguin's characteristic cackle was one of the most unforgettable features of Burgess Meredith's performance, which turned into a legend. For Batman fans, the Penguin's distinctive sound, a raspy, evil laugh, became instantly identifiable. However, there is a humorous tale to the creation of that well-known cackle that even Meredith was surprised at. In reality, years of excessive cigarette smoking were the cause of the actor's raspy voice. Meredith had spent a large portion of his adult life smoking, like many others in his generation. Many performers smoked both on and off film without fully knowing the health consequences, because cigarettes were widespread and socially acceptable at the time. Here's the irony, though. In fact, Meredith had given up smoking 20 years prior to Batman's filming. Long before he had heard of the Penguin in the 1940s, he had quit smoking cigarettes. He had been smoke-free for 20 years by the time he tried out for Batman in the 1960s. His voice cord damage from those earlier years of smoking persisted, though. Long-term tobacco usage causes a lasting raspiness in his voice, which Meredith likely perceived as a regrettable reminder of a long-standing bad habit proved to be just what the Penguin required. Meredith's penguin cackle became so famous that it affected all subsequent actors portraying the character. However, the show was about to introduce a new hero who would completely alter the course of events. While the Penguin was turning into a classic villain, Batman's ratings were beginning to decline by the time the third season aired. The campy superhero series was losing its novelty.